What is going on, everybody? We have just received the latest content drop in 5th edition material, and no, it is not a new book. Theros is not yet released at the time of this video, and it is not Unearthed Arcana either. So what is it? It is Elminster's Candlekeep Companion, released over on DM's Guild. And this release is meaty. There is a lot of content here. We have a bunch of new spells, 4 new subclasses. So there's a lot to cover, and I'm going to be splitting this up into multiple videos like I usually do. But today I want to do a sort of mini review on just one of these subclasses for the Cleric that has a very strange theme to it, and I want to just give my thoughts on this. And this subclass is the Cleric of Prophecy. So this is the Cleric of Prophecy. This is the domain of fate, destiny, and prediction. Unlike most of the divine domains, it is not always granted by a god associated with those particular phenomena. Instead, any deity that wishes to have a more direct voice among mortals can bestow upon a cleric the prophetic gifts provided by this domain. Now, a fact about this entire compendium as a whole, it is chock full of lore bits and information. There's honestly probably more lore in this book than actual new information that we could use to play with. So I'm going to try to skip over most of the lore. If you want me to cover lore topics, I can do that in a different video. But this one is going to be focused purely on what we are gaining from this new subclass, starting with the domain spell list. So the domain spells we get at first level are Detect Good and Evil and Prophesize Strike. At 3rd, we get Augury and Fine Steed. At 5th, we get Bestow Curse and Clairvoyance. At 7th, we get Arcane Eye, Prescient Sense. And at 9th, we get Commune and Dream. Now, something to note in this domain spell list here is a noticeable lack of the divination spell. I feel like as a Cleric of Prophecy, divination would be a spell that they would get in this list of prepared spells. I don't know if this was intentional or if there was a reason for this design choice, but that's just the first thing I noticed immediately right off the bat. Moving on to the bonus cantrips, you get the Guidance and Vicious Mockery cantrips. They do not count against the cantrips you already know, but instead of insults for Vicious Mockery, you utter prophecies of punishment for the target's transgressions. And a nice little lore flavorful bit there. You also get proficiency in Insight and Religion. Something you'd probably already take anyway, but all right. Now, this next passive ability is probably the most interesting part of this subclass. It is the Oracle's Burden. When you choose this domain at first level, you are granted preternatural insight, but at a difficult price. You have disadvantage on saving throws against exhaustion, which are very few and far between, by the way, but when they do happen, it's kind of important that you don't mess those up. And you must choose one of the following Oracle's Burdens options, each which includes a both hindrance and a blessing. And there are 6 options here. Starting with Choked Voice, you can never speak louder than a whisper, except when you speak or sing as part of casting a spell. So the verbal aspect of a spell, you can speak louder than a whisper. Only creatures within 10 feet of you can hear your voice, and when a creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an attack, you can use your reaction to roll a d4, subtracting the number roll from the target's attack roll. Now, something to note real quick here is that this does not have a limited number of uses, either in general or per turn, as Debilitating Ailment does right here, where it says once per turn when you make an attack roll, you can add a d4. Up here, there's no limitation. So every single time somebody attacks anywhere within 30 feet of you, you can just reduce that attack roll by a d4. That's very powerful at level 1. Scaling into the later game, not so much perhaps, but immediately getting this at level 1 is honestly pretty crazy. Moving on to the actual Debilitating Ailment condition. An incurable illness depletes your physical fortitude. Your hit point maximum decreases by 2 when you gain this feature and decreases by 1 again whenever you gain a cleric level. So at level 20, you will have a permanent minus 21 to your hit points if you take this trait. Is that worth it? Well, that's for you to decide. Really just depends on how well you built your constitution. Once per turn, when you make an attack roll, you can roll a d4 and add the number to your attack roll. So basically, you permanently have Bless on you. That's basically what this does. It just gives you Bless without having to cast it at any point, but you have basically almost a permanent -2 to your constitution. Pretty crazy. Next up, there's Sightless Vision. A milky film covers your eyes. To you, bright light is considered dim light, and dim light is considered darkness, and you can't see in darkness. However, you have blind sight to a distance of 30 feet, so you don't really need to see in the dark. So you go blind, but the trade-off is you get blind sight. Next up, we have surprising age. You are either very young or very old, as your calling to prophecy came during the season of your life outside the normal range of adventuring ages. Choose an ability score, either strength, dexterity, or wisdom. You have disadvantage on ability checks made with the chosen ability. When you cast a cleric spell of first level or higher that causes the creature to make a saving throw using the chosen ability, you can roll a d4 and subtract the number rolled from the target's first saving throw made against the spell. So you need to use some decision making when choosing your thing, not just the one you would use the least, but which one you think your enemies would use the most. The one that immediately comes to my mind is probably wisdom, as there are a lot of like crowd control-y spells that you might want to give creatures disadvantage on. Dexterity is something if you have a player who loves throwing fireballs around, but this is definitely a big brain ailment to choose. Next up, there's Thorn in the Flesh. You have supernatural wound that reopens when you exert yourself. Your walking speed can't be greater than 20 feet, and when you take the dash action at the end of that turn, you take magical piercing damage equal to your cleric level, which can't be reduced in any way. But you add a bonus equal to your wisdom modifier, minimum of 1, to all strength and constitution saving throws. So adding your wisdom score to your strength and con saves. Really good to make concentration checks, as that's what you're mostly going to be making constitution saving throws on, but taking anywhere from 1 magical damage to 20 magical damage per turn, depending on where you are in your game, just if you want to move further than 20 feet. Oh god. If you're primarily ranged focused, this probably doesn't matter too much, but if you are trying to build like a melee cleric, you definitely don't want to take this one. Finally, there's Withered Hand. One of your hands is withered. You have disadvantage on any weapon attacks made with that hand and can't carry a shield with it. When you roll a 1 on the damage die for a cleric spell, you can reroll the die and must use the new roll even if it's a 1. So it's a great weapon fighting light, but you cannot carry a shield, and basically a second weapon is going to be kind of useless. Going over the most to least powerful in this list, I would probably start with Choked Voice being the most powerful of all of these, as forever making enemies subtract a d4 to their attack rolls as long as they're within 30 feet of you is pretty okay. Also, I don't really see the need to speak outside of 10 feet unless you're trying to like yell information. This seems like a really weak weakness for the insane benefit of minusing a d4 on every attack roll ever made in the future. Next up, probably Debilitating Ailment would be your best one, as trading a small amount of hit points for a permanent bless effect on you is pretty great. You basically never have to cast or take the bless spell ever. After that, Withered Hand is probably the third best, as depending on your build, you can kind of get around not having to wield a shield or a second weapon with a cleric, but being able to reroll 1s on your damage for something like Guiding Bolt, where you roll a lot of d6s, which has a good chance of coming up at least a couple of 1s. That's pretty nice. Thorn in the Flesh is awful. You probably don't ever want to take this. Just adding your wisdom bonus to only 2 saving throws that aren't really even used that often. Really weak, and your movement speed just gets cut by a third. That's not good at all. Surprising Age is also pretty bad. Take these dexterity and wisdom saving throws are made a lot, so making that hard choice, and strength saving throws, basically prepare to get grappled for the rest of your life. And the benefit doesn't really work when you have to sacrifice one of your own super critical saving throws. And Sightless Vision really is up to you on how much you plan on using sight when you already have blind sight. It's really hard to rate that one, but overall, Choked Voice and Debilitating Ailment are probably your go-tos for this in terms of price for power. Then Withered Hand and Thorn in the Flesh if you really need those benefits, and just don't take Surprising Age. Now that the level 1 part's out of the way, let's move on to the new Channel Divinity, Prophetic Vision. Starting at 2nd level, you can use your Channel Divinity to receive a vision of the future. As an action, make a religion or insight check and record the number rolled. You can replace any attack roll, saving throw, or ability check made by you or the creature that you can see with the recorded result. So it's basically the portent dice of a divination wizard, but with a insight or religion check, which you're getting advantage on earlier up. You must choose to do so before the roll. You can only use the roll once, and when you finish a short or long rest, you lose any unused roll. So being able to just become a divination wizard with the portent dice once or twice or maybe a couple times per rest with your Channel Divinity is pretty good. So they basically reprinted Divination Wizard, but in the form of some skill checks. At level 6, you get Cryptic Advice. As a bonus action, you can give a piece of indirect yet insightful advice to a creature with which you share a language. Once during the next hour, when that creature makes an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, it can recall your Cryptic Advice, choosing to reroll the attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, and gaining advantage on the new roll. The creature makes this choice after the roll. As soon as the DM declares whether the result is a failure, the creature must use the second result. Once you've used this again, you cannot use it again until you finish a short or long rest. So once per day, you can choose to give a creature advantage on something that they want to use it on, which can be decided after the result is considered a failure. So it's basically an even better divination type spell. Once per day makes this balanced. I think this is a really good ability. Devout Strike at 8th level. Once on each of your turns, when you deal damage to one or more targets, you can choose to deal an extra 2d4 damage to one of those targets. This extra damage is magical damage of the same type as the damage already being dealt to the target. At 17th level, the extra damage increases to 3d4. So you just get a flat damage bonus once per turn at level 8 for no other cost. Now, it also should be noted that this can seem to apply to both weapon damage if you're a melee-based character, or a spell if you choose to go that route. So this is very versatile. For the final ability, Soothsaying, starting at 17th level, by paying the price in your own flesh, you experience a powerful flash of magical revelation. As a bonus action, you can expend up to 5 hit dice, regaining a spell slot of equal level to the number of hit dice expended. In addition, the first time you use this feature each day, you glimpse your destiny. Once before you finish a long rest, if you fail an ability check, attack roll, or saving throw, you can choose to succeed instead. So you basically give yourself your 6th level ability at 17th once per day. Now at 17th level, you would get your 17 hit dice. So theoretically, you could use this to regain at most 3 5th level spells and 1 2nd level spell, since you can only expend up to 5 hit dice. Now, is that worth it? Well, you kind of have to look at the entire 5th level cleric spell list to determine whether recovering 3 5th level spells per day is worth it at the cost of your hit dice, by the way, which you can see right here. You have the notable ones here would probably be Flame Strike for damage, Mass Cure Wounds if you're in desperate need of healing at 17th level, and probably Raise Dead would be the 3 here that make the most sense to use this on. If you're in a bind, you could also argue that getting a Greater Restoration spell back would be nice. But this one's really hard to determine how good this is. I think when I make a character for the next campaign, I will probably make a cleric of this prophecy domain, because a lot of this is really hard to gauge without actually playing or seeing played. But it does seem really powerful, which definitely fits the theme of power at a price. So I am definitely intrigued on how this is going to play out in an actual game. I will make one of these myself, but I will make this character myself. But for now, guys, that is going to do it for me. There is a lot more information in this book that I'm going to cover in future videos, but this is just the one that I had to get out because it is definitely the most unique subclass that I have seen to date in 5th edition with this power for a price system. And I wanted to give you guys my thoughts on that. But what do you guys think about this new cleric domain subclass thing? Let me know in the comments down below. I'm interested to hear your guys' opinions. Next video, we'll talk about all of the other subclasses here. We have the Monk Way of the Avowed Preserver. We have the new Bard College of Destiny. And finally, we have the Wizard of the Academic Lore. So those will be coming in the next video. But until next time, guys, happy gaming.